Hello, this is Brett Bumeter. I'm here on the Zeta Mining Show with my co-host Warren Whitlock, and today Warren is he's live from his office, but he's shooting in from his mobile phone. So kudos to mobile phone technology. It's an awesome backup when other things start to go down. So how are you doing, Warren?
Well, we'll see how good a quality it is, but yeah, it's interesting that we decided that we wanted to talk about content quality and authenticity. There's no doubt about it. I wouldn't fake setting this kind of stuff up where phones don't work, things don't seem to come together, and oh yeah, and then there's the ugly face.
Right.
That's all natural. That's all me.
So today's show, we're going to talk about a couple different themes and content trends, and those are inspired by a couple articles that I'll mention at the beginning of the show, and we'll include links in this description if you're looking at this, watching this on YouTube or on Google+. We'll include the links to the actual articles, but there's two articles that we're going to refer to in the show. One of those is called "The Future of Content Marketing," or "The Future of Content Marketing is Authentic Stories," by a gentleman named Warren Whitlock, who, oh wait, that's you, Warren. and, and the other article is by Joe Foley from WPMU Dev, a blog, and the article is titled UX Hack, User Design Hack, Making Long WordPress Posts Easier to Read and Scan. And that title is a bit of a mouthful, but basically it sets up the theme for our show, which is content trends, talking about authentic stories, long stories, and organizing your long authentic stories or your stories or whatever they might be so that people can actually consume those, basically improving the quality such that it's readable, and just the overall trend. So Warren, let's kick it off. You've been talking about authentic stories and being authentic for years since I've known you. So that takes us back 8 or 9 years or so at least. So this isn't a new concept, but it is something that I think people always need reminders about it, because as the more you write, the more you share stories online, sometimes we stray from our own goals and paths a little bit, and so it always helps to get a little refocused and bring things back to a grounded level, I think.
Well, yeah, I think the truth is the truth. It's always been the truth, and that's and telling the truth is authenticity, honesty, integrity, whatever. And so there was a time, or many times, when the way the technology worked changes from one thing to another. For instance, for a while, being able to post a whole lot of content, nonsense, just words, and content just became something to fill up servers, might do well in a certain algorithm that Google was running or whatever. Mm-hmm. Never has it been true that humans want to get fake content. I can tell you a great example. Back when I had a content site in a business, I ran them as two separate things, and I could work on the content site and my sales would go up. I could never see a connection between the two. Buying PPC ads, is pre-Google, and see things coming in, and then, I would stop because it seemed like to be a waste of time to be writing out the answers to a lot of questions online and engaging so many people, and it's only one at a time, and I had an audience of thousands in my mailing list. Why did I need to do this? And every time I moved that direction, it seemed to hurt sales. And I say seemed because we couldn't measure it all. As measurement got better and better, and some of the loopholes got closed by Google or just, whatever. It just always seems to be true that you write better stuff and people like it more. Especially the ones like when you talk to them on the phone while they're placing an order, they say, yeah, I really like your stuff. They never say, hey, I really like that directory listing you had on the site in China.
Yeah.
They call in and they say, I'm buying because of your your service and what you say and who you are. And so I think humans always wanted the better content. So, which then, leaves us with the problem. There's times when I was buying ads and they were all showing up on those kind of sites. So I had to tell Google I didn't want those. Now today, Google advertising content on all sites all over the place seems to work pretty good. The algorithms seem to have cleaned up a lot of the article farms and places to just stick content to try to get links. And we're back to taking a look at this. And if there's a fad for content marketing, it's coming from those changes. And you still have the people who did the algorithms trying to invent the new algorithm. How many words should an article have for a Google search engine to like it? Things like that. And to me, what I really want is to get the information I'm looking for. Popular meme came out the other day that there was a video, people were talking about it. I don't want to get into the details of what that was, but I said, I'd like to know more about this, war in a foreign country, those kind of things, something I didn't know about. And I started typing in the individuals and the countries and the, whatever keywords I could to try to find out more about it. And what I got was more and more of the same thing. Some competent writers had rewritten the story, and it actually made it more difficult to find out that it was the same thing repeated over and over again. You get frustrated after about 5 of those, and you find out every news channel, every website, every blogger, every news feed is covering it in the same way with the same, the same photo, and somewhere the same quotes from the same, UN official or whatever. That you go like, I want some more. I want some depth on this, and the depth's not there. So I think sometimes we want to read more, watch a longer video, get more engaged, and if our viewing habits are any indication, while we're making short YouTube videos, we're watching more. We're binge watching TV. We're watching movies online. We're watching long form. The long form's never gone away.
Well, that's where the UX article sort of comes in, and sorry, we're getting Warren's getting a phone call on the other thing. That's one of the perils of doing the show with a phone. But the UX article that we referenced, it talks about the concept that people want to take a deep dive into topics, because in the early days when the internet was new, there weren't a lot of articles out there, and people started answering the questions. And then they started with the simple questions, and then they moved on to the more complicated questions. Sites like Wikipedia evolved, and people started filling them in with more and more content. And other people realized that this was a source of traffic, and then content farm type sites started being generated, and people were chasing traffic, writing asinine answers to things, or going very shallow on topics just to scoop the traffic, scrape the traffic, what have you. And Google, through their algorithm, has made changes to block that, because essentially it makes it difficult, like Warren mentioned, to it makes it very difficult to find the primary source, find questions, take a deep dive on something, and people start fulfilling it. Other people oh, sorry, Warren, I'm muting something. I've got you listed on here twice. Let me. But we're getting feedback on one of these. Can't quite tell which one's the live Warren. So you can't see it on the show, but I've got 2 Warrens on here at the moment. I'm going to try and... anyway, as I was saying, people want to take a deep dive now, and so that's created this new trend where longer stories are getting more play. And they're getting that because people are writing articles that are a bit more of a deep dive. And those longer articles, though, they aren't easy. And when we say longer articles, we're not talking like the 400 word count article. We're talking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,000 words. Now that's a whole lot to write, and it takes a whole lot more to make one of those articles useful. You have to spend a lot more time planning it. You have to spend a lot more time editing it. You need to throw up more signposts and things like that to show people where they are in the article. Tables of contents come into play, which is an SEO thing. Not that this is an SEO show, but that can help when you've got some interlinking going throughout the article. And those types of things help organize the content, help display the content, and guide people through the article such that they can take that deep dive. If they know a portion of this, the information, they can jump somewhere else and jump ahead if they need to, or jump back if they need to refresh something, and so on. So I'm testing to see if we've got Warren back yet. I still
You're muting me.
I'm trying to unmute you.
Okay. Yes. We actually didn't have two. We had three of me there for a moment. Somebody decided to call on the phone.
Right.
and it went through the computer speakers. The phone was muted, but it went through the computer speakers, and I was using a computer speaker as a prop. So it got really weird.
Right.
But you can tell it's authentic because nobody would do this stuff on purpose.
That's true. So this is probably...
I got most of what you were saying, and I agree. I think that I think all of those things that were important before, like search engines and is there a link and things like that, are still there. Matt Cutts tells us that he is.
Told us he's retiring or something, going on hiatus.
That's different. We're not a news program. He's taking a sabbatical or doing something, but who cares? What I've got from talking to him, when I've met with him and then just watching it in general, is that what he says is that they're trying really hard to walk the fine line between saying we don't want you to spam, and which practices are okay and not okay, and you get at it, all of the things that people find out they try to turn into spam. So they find out that long articles are good, they're going to write long, boring articles, and that's never good. I'll give you
protecting the content. I've always thought it's about trying to make, if you write something, sometimes if it does end up being boring, you need to go back and rewrite it.
Right.
And maybe not write the second article or the third article until you've improved or perfected that first article. You don't need more blog articles. You need a better blog article.
Right. I think I've told you, I'm not going to remember if we got into the show, about Peter Shankman writing that he wasn't going to do as many check-ins and tweets and things like that. He deleted Foursquare and stopped doing that. By the way, I'm at the South by Southwest, V2V, here in Vegas this week, and no one is checking in. Foursquare's gone. You can I read the numbers or use it and see what's happening. It doesn't matter. I go to South by and there's not 40 people logged in. There's something wrong.
Or something evolving to a new right. I've never been a fan of Foursquare, but or for that matter, I'm not a big fan of checking in on Facebook or some of the other services that allow you to check in. But that's just a personal preference thing. It's not.
No,
I see the value in the technology.
No. What I'm saying is they made a change in their technology, and the check-ins went away really quick. Either I've completely forgotten how to use Foursquare and such, or it's just not there. I'm not seeing as many, quite the volume of tweets. Now, it may be this crowd is a little bit different. I was at the event last year, its inaugural event. I can't remember noticing anything there, but now with the Swarm app, it's really easy to tell who's near you that's on your friends list. So if, and there's certain people in Las Vegas that do that. I mean, we have a Foursquare day, we have enthusiasts, and I go down to the Strip or downtown and I don't see, I don't see check-ins, or even it'll tell you if your friend's there and he hasn't checked in anywhere. That just seems to be gone, and so something's going on there. Meanwhile, I use their Swarm app and see something. What I'm getting at is that the quality of that content wasn't there. I'm now posting Instagram photos and writing about them. I'm trying to up my game in quality, despite today's show. or any of them. I am who I am. I'm not trying to be somebody different. I'm not trying to edit out all the ums and ahs and completely change who I am. Go from a script instead of being natural, because I think it's the appeal of me, such as I am. I have fans and I have detractors. A lot of people go, they can't stand listening to that old fool, and they're gone already. So I don't need to worry about them.
Yep. Well, that's a good point. Just on the ums and ahs, when we're doing a live show like we're doing here, there's this is definitely live and sometimes kind of raw and sometimes the technology discombobulates us, and that's just the way it is. On the flip side, I also make tutorial videos, which I publish to YouTube. When I make those videos, I do edit those. I do cut out the ums and the ahs and the spaces and stuff like that, partly because the tutorial video has to be more perfected for people to watch it. If there's too many distracting things in that type of video, which is not a live conversation where people follow the flow of the conversation, they have to follow the tutorial. They're not following me talking to them as much. It helps to perfect it, improve things down. I think there's certain forms where that makes a whole lot more sense, and certain forms where you as the narrator need to get out of the way a little bit and make sure that your personality isn't undermining the topic that you're trying to present. So just there's different situations.
Yeah, I'll add one more. I went to 2 sessions yesterday at the South by Southwest event here, and the V2V means it's I'm not really sure what the V2V means.
They were the letters they could get.
It's all startups. Everybody's talking about
Right.
startups, fundraising, things like that. Okay, the first session I went to was Hollywood people. And you know what I feel about old media. I use hashtag old media all the time. When somebody's trying to explain, social media, Google Hangouts, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube especially, and describe it in TV terms. Or they're looking at blogs from a journalist viewpoint, which is dead. We're in a new model. They just don't know it. And there was a lot of that going on. And I actually tweeted that I stayed up late the night before, and I was going in this Hollywood session to get a nap. And I'll be danged. Everybody was very interesting on the panel. It was all free form. The moderator had a few questions he wanted to ask, and not enough to get in the way, but trending that direction. And these 4 people were having a discussion, and everything they said was interesting. Somebody from the board of directors of Netflix, and he says, and Reed said this, and you go like, oh, this guy really is, up there, knows about these things. And a venture capitalist, and it didn't match at all what I wanted, but the information was good, and I stayed awake through the whole thing. Then I went over to one that I did want to see about crowdfunding, and most of the audience, they polled the audience, good for them. They found out that indeed most of the audience had no idea about crowdfunding, especially equity crowdfunding.
Yep.
And the 4 people were good people to talk about it, and whatever rules or however they got together, the moderator put up slides for all of them. And every one of them had very text-filled slides, a lot of data, nothing bad about the data, but they were reading the slides. And I got about halfway through it, and I just had to get up and leave. It was boring.
That's a very weird way to do a panel. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's, I can't say they were bad speakers or bad people, and it wasn't bad information. It wasn't any of that. It just was boring. And so I guess that's, I like to say when you're making content, don't worry about the length or the format or the channel you're using. Just make it amazing. Make it awesome.
Yeah.
And some people will attack that and say, yeah, you're always saying awesome, and that's just a buzzword itself. Well, okay, make it not suck.
Right. Well, to your earlier, you were talking about articles, essentially, not your words, my words, getting regurgitated. Getting rewritten or copied over and over and over again, so that you can't tell the primary source you can't find the original thread because there's so many copies of the copy of the copy. And I think one of the ways that people can alleviate that is, one, just stop regurgitating, quit copying the copy. But if you do have an interesting perspective, if you've got an authentic story that adds to the topic, then then things can work. And I don't mean just rewriting it in your own words. I mean actually coming up with something that adds to it, something, some personal perspective, some subjective view. It's not taking the news headline and applying it in a way that people haven't thought of already. That can make more sense, as opposed to, and I don't mean saying, well, I'm on the left and I want to say it from this perspective, or I'm on the right and I want to say it from this perspective. Actually, that's not the way. That's just stirring people up against each other. What I mean is actually adding something to that topic through your own experience or story. And I think that's one of the things where your article, sharing authentic stories, can really be beneficial to people. If you do find that unique thing that you can offer on the topic, then it can be very powerful. If you don't, you're going to fail and end up being part of the regurgitation crowd. So there's that fine line that people have to.
Well, and it's scary because that post that I did has an original video in it, which I had to take my phone out by the pool and stand in a different place, and it's something I don't like doing. The lighting wasn't how I wanted it, and I wanted palm trees in the background. There's plenty of palm trees on my block. The problem is that I couldn't stand in the right place for the light and still see the phone and remember what I was going to say. And so it came out as authentic, but not quite as polished as I'd like it to be, even for my casual style. And then I decided to put in a photo, and as the story goes, the photo was, not me photoshopping. It was somebody else doing a bad Photoshop, my son, and that became part of the story. And so that photo had to go in there, and it's a horrible photo. It's embarrassing to put that photo in there, and it's not even me. It's bad enough that it's got my face in it, but it's not me. And so that has been passed around now on Twitter, and and I'm thinking, like, what am I doing? How am I cheapening my brand? And that's something. It's funny. One of the things that was mentioned in one of those sessions yesterday, which I think was actually the more authentic thing to say, the guy says, well, as you know, when you're thinking about getting a job, you want to make sure you don't put on your resume pictures of you hanging out in Vegas. And I'm thinking, like, oh, that's funny. He obviously hasn't seen my stream today.
Might be different if you live in Vegas, I suppose.
Yeah,
your pictures of you hanging out in Vegas are probably a little bit better than mine.
Yeah, the actual photos were partiers someplace, and I can't identify the surroundings. I'm almost positive that the photo my son used was not from Vegas, but I don't know. It was just the same kind of souvenir that I was looking for, and so that became the story. And and back to what you were saying about adding value, I think that's great. It's a different perspective. I've been talking about this quite a bit, and it just occurred to me as you were saying the left and the right. It's not I'm from the left, I need to present the left perspective. Actually, what I'd like to read is somebody from the left talking about the right's perspective and what the good points are, instead of picking them apart. And picking them apart, that's good too. Sometimes you want to read somebody take apart a bad argument.
Yeah, the pendulum swung too far. We don't need a cross fire, we need a cross love.
Cross love. And that's true. Stephen Covey's last book, The Third Alternative, talking about false dichotomies that we fight with left and right and east and west and, small business versus big business and government versus the people, 1% versus the 99, all of those kind of things, Palestinians and Israelis, all of those things form a dichotomy, and they're a false dichotomy in that those people have more in common than they have apart. Take the big one, Israelis and Palestinians. They all live in the same place. They have shared experiences, shared history, and in some cases shared grocery store. So and of course there's a very divisive uh, issue they need to address. But instead of talking about what's wrong with the other side, if they went and looked at what was good, that would be interesting. And I bring that up because that's wide open. You want to write about something, pick a little bit different perspective than you or the other side has already said, and talk about it in a different way. You don't have to take silly pictures and make bad videos. You can do it however you want. But as long as it's authentic, and I dare say my video and article will get read more than one that says this is the things you should do 1, 2, 3. People will love the one that says this is the thing you should do 1, 2, 3, and people will retweet clever headlines. So that's still the truth of how it works out there. But people
Yep.
who engage and read will learn something and feel more connected with the authentic art. If they can get back by those pictures of me.
That's very true. And I think that that builds upon the idea of where long stories can come in. And it's not writing long just to have something long and have higher word count. It's sometimes when you start combining the two sides and showing where there are commonalities and how those commonalities work together, that gives you more to talk about. So as you take one thing and add another and another and another, before you know it, you've got not just the things to talk about, describing them originally, which might be single, small, regurgitated articles, but when you put them together, all those connection points where they come together and meet become other things that you can explain, pitfalls to avoid, benefits that you achieve by putting them together, the synergies and things like that. That's all things that you can write about. But when you make that great big long thing, you now have to think about, how am I going to present these things? When is the proper time to bring in A and B and C? And maybe we skip D and go to F and then come back to D later when it's more appropriate. And that's where some of the organization comes in and helping those articles evolve. I found several years ago that I did better at longer articles when I did combine 2 or 3 things together. I just had an article from 4 years ago that got picked up on syndication yesterday. And just, I thought the article was mostly dead, but it still has resonance because I melted together 3 different things, 3 different perspectives and tools, and how you can use them all together. Those are where some of the opportunities are where people can, help express their genius or their perspective and help people, help show how that value can be achieved or realized a little bit. And then, the key point is, and kind of keeping it real, keeping it authentic as well, which is where your article, I think, comes in and helps ground everything. Because if it's too cold, if it's too often, if things are too objective sometimes, then people, they might as well be reading a dissertation or something like that submitted to a medical journal. And important when you're trying to dig into the data and get that primary source, but when you're casually reading something, it doesn't always, it's not something that will necessarily stick with you because it just doesn't connect as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, I know this is right because when we're talking like this, I'm getting other ideas about how this will work for me and what I can do, and, along with the usual, well, I could say that too. In what I've learned as attention spans are definitely shorter, there's more information out there, that engaging is become more important. I would quote Liz Strauss here when I interviewed her about having 80,000 comments on her blog. She's first of all, well, it's now much higher. This was years ago.
Yep.
And first of all, it says, well, it's mostly me answering people. Well, great. That means you're engaged. That's good. But get your comment count up and it's natural and you're answering people. Of course, that's good. And she said one of the keys was writing a blog post that wasn't complete. So hers were medium, not what we're talking about as your long post and not the short things in between. But she would write something and then somebody else would leave people with a question. And I actually tried that for a while, tried to go ahead and make sure it was a good question. And the comments just, skyrocketed. I think commenting, value and how it's done today is different, but that's not, not what I'm talking about. let me say one more thing. Suggested tweets. Come on. If you need to have somebody help you write 140 characters, they're not authentic in the first place. Because guess who writes authentic? Who writes the suggested tweets? You know, the lowest level of copywriting. Now, if Steve Martin wrote suggested tweets for me, I would use them. You know,
well, I think that's one.
Obama, maybe I'll use them. He's a good speaker.
I think Twitter has, for them, they've solved the problem of some of the regurgitation, just because when people retweet things, the primary source, the original tweeter, can be retained. If it's a quoted tweet, then it causes a problem. But
well, and the quoted in that putting RT worked so much better than their system for a long time. Today, I use mostly just retweeting. Do it several a day, and still fight the urge to just retweet a bunch of things and not bother to read them because you want to comment.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'll retweet it because I want my audience to know about something, and then I'll answer the person, knowing they're not going to get it. It's not about how much content I can get up there. It's about how many people can I engage. And in fact, as I got good at it, it's kind of opposite. New tool from Twitter yesterday that shows much more about how many people actually read your tweets, and fascinating things that we'll put on some other show later. But yeah, reaffirmed to me again that I can put something Einstein set up as a quote. I handpick quotes that I like to share, and when I share them, they get retweeted or reshared a lot more because it's good quality content. Good pictures will. Fortunately, the picture from the article that we're going to link to and let you all look at is not one of them. So, yeah. With that, subscribe, comment, and let me know. I want to talk to you.
Right. So I think this is we've had our technical challenges at the beginning of the show, but I think we ended up in a pretty good place with this conversation. And I want to welcome everybody to share this video if you're catching it on YouTube, subscribe, and catch some more of our shows in the future, or join us through Google+, through Google Hangouts. Send in your comments, your feedbacks, your requests for other topics to cover, or maybe you'd like to join us for a show in the future. We thank everybody for watching us live today, and we thank everybody that's going to catch this in the future. Check us out again. We're at youtube.com/Zeta Mining. Thanks, Warren. I hope you have a good time at V2V for South by Southwest there in Vegas, and we will see everybody next week.